He's a horror movie icon who got his start on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
I don't know why Fred would hire a scary guy.
People must not bite other people.
But he did.
The George A. Romero Interview on CJOB 68.
Welcome back to our interview with George A. Romero. George, you said you resisted making a sequel to Night of the Living Dead for a number of years, but inspiration eventually struck in the form of one of the most mundane of modern-day institutions. Tell us about that.
I socially knew the people who were developing the first big shopping mall in and around Pittsburgh, and I went out to visit before it was even open. I said, okay, here's an idea for a movie.
If you've seen Night of the Living Dead, you've already had the appetizer. Now get ready for the main course, Dawn of the Dead, a gruesome reminder that we are what we eat. Dawn of the Dead.
When I finally got the idea, I went out to visit this shopping mall, and I saw it, and I said, wow. And it was the first time that I really got the idea that I could use this scenario. I could use zombies. I could use the genre to do social satire. Within 10 days of my visit to that mall, I got a call from an Italian horror director, Dario Argento, who had got my number from my agent and called me up and said he had money to make a sequel to Night of the Living Dead. And I said, gee, it so happens that I just got this idea. And he said, well, come to Rome. And he brought me to Rome, stuck me in an apartment, and said, write a script. And I did. I mean, that's how it happened. It was just completely serendipitous. Thankfully, ever since then, things have come a lot easier. But it was amazing those early years how, a few strokes of luck. I resisted sort of going to Hollywood and making a sequel for a studio. I did resist that, and I've always been sort of a maverick that way and chosen to work independently. But luckily, my films have been successful enough that I'm still around and still able to do them. I think Night of the Living Dead is probably, in the end, the most successful of them all, because that film has been playing for 42 years. But we never had a copyright on that film. We flopped. Our title was Night of the Flesh Eaters, and we stupidly put the copyright notice on the title card. And when the distributor changed the title to Night of the Living Dead, the copyright notice came off, and the film's been in public domain ever since. But I think that probably Night of the Living Dead, in the end, was huge. It's just that there was nobody keeping an accounting, It was the reason that we did a remake. It was the reason we allowed a colorized version, trying to reestablish a copyright on the film. Jack and I, my friend who co-wrote the screenplay, basically made a deal with each other and said, look, you go your way and I'll go mine. And we allowed each other to do any sequels that we wanted to do. And Jack did the Return of the Living Dead stuff. That's where it came from.
You didn't come up with the brains.
Not me. No zombie has ever eaten brains in one of my movies.
No.
They're too weak. How are they going to crack a skull open?
They're omnivorous.
They don't run. They can't dig their way out of graves.
Oh.
They're too weak.
That's right.
They're dead.
Running zombies should be banned.
Listen. I actually have made T-shirts that say "Fast Zombies Suck."
Well, I'll be placing my order. Definitely. Dawn of the Dead, you certainly got involved with a very creative crew there, Tom Savini not being the least of which, very much instrumental in the success of that film. Talk about working with Tom Savini and his special effects work.
Well, Tom is just, first of all, he's a ball of energy. He's a great guy. He remains a great friend of mine. But he was a genius. I mean, he was able to improvise things. He was able to compensate. Making films is constantly compromising. And there are always things that come up and bite you on the butt, and you have to try to solve the problem quickly and efficiently. And Tom was great at that. And he's got this amazing energy on the set and a wonderfully creative thinker. I always tell this story. One of the gags in Dawn of the Dead, one of the main characters, it was a continuity error. He had a jacket tied around his waist, and we shot a scene we always shoot out of sequence, and we forgot to put the jacket on it. So we had to shoot a scene where he lost the jacket, and so we needed a zombie to grab the jacket. So now we needed to kill that zombie. Within 5 minutes, Savini went off and got a screwdriver and a soda straw, painted the soda straw silver, stuck it on the screwdriver so that, if you can imagine this, when you stab with the screwdriver, the soda straw collapses and it looks like the screwdriver is penetrating. And he said, okay, he'll stab this zombie in the ear with his screwdriver. And he rigged up a little squirter to squirt blood out of the straw. And it's one of the most effective and cringing scenes in the movie. And Tom came up with it in 2 minutes, on the spur of the moment.
There's certainly an element of humor in your films. Starting with Dawn, certainly there was pies in the face, in the zombies.
Literally, there was a pie fight.
That's right. But yet they were...
You really do know this stuff. I'm amazingly... This is great. I'm impressed. To me, I mentioned, I think, that I grew up on these EC comic books. And again, before the comics code.
Yes.
Tales from the Crypt and all that. And the Crypt Keeper would introduce these grotesque, bizarre tales, always with puns. I mean, bad puns. It was all full of humor. It was all jokes. It was almost like stand-up comedy. And the stories in those comic books were always, the bad guys always got their comeuppance in some very sort of clever way.
Ironic twist.
Ironic way. That, I'll never forget one where there was a nasty baseball player. His heart wound up being torn out and used as third base or something like that. And I just chuckled. I mean, I just got a tremendous chuckle out of this stuff always. Now, not everybody reacts that way, and I completely appreciate that. It's like, not everybody likes Tabasco sauce, and not everybody likes roller coaster rides, but people that do react to those things gleefully. And I know that that's always been me. Maybe I need a shrink. But with Dawn of the Dead, I sort of relaxed into it, and I said, okay, man, we're going to have a good time here. Ever since then, I've really tried to make sure that there's, at least a little bit of wit or some humor in it. And I'm sitting and writing a script, and if something silly occurs to me, I write it. I don't throw it away. It's the Chuck Jones mentality, I think, Warner Brothers, right? The Coyote and the Roadrunner cartoons. It's fun to watch the coyote get damaged. And I think that in the world of horror, it's fun to watch zombies get damaged.
My favorite, the helicopter blade scene in Dawn of the Dead was certainly first, I think.
Yeah. Well, it's one of my faves, of course. I mean, it was another beautiful invention of Savini's. And he found a guy, and I go to these horror conventions every once in a while. And this guy, Jim Crutt, is always there. He's the helicopter zombie. He actually has a career signing autographs now because he's the helicopter zombie.
Oh, well.
But it's amazing. And Tom picked him because he had sort of a high forehead and a flat head. And he built this device on him that he could pull off with invisible threads from the side. And it was just beautifully inventive. We had to animate the helicopter blade, of course, because Jim wouldn't allow for us to use a real blade. But I find that actors don't really want to be damaged.
Some actors are more willing to take chances, but that's going a little too far.
Going a little too far.
Yeah. Stay with us. We'll be back with more about the undercurrents of social satire in the films of our very special guest this evening, Mr. George A. Romero.
Today's undead may have the agility of Olympic sprinters, but the man who's the authority on the subject doesn't buy it.
I actually have made T-shirts that say, Fast Zombies Suck.
The George A. Romero Interview on CJOB 68.